So welcome everybody to our talk, When Hate Becomes the Headlines. My name is Kaz Smart, and this is my husband, Dr. Junior Smart. And before we get the talk started today, we just wanted to open with a dedication to our brother and comrade, Gary O'Donnell, who was part of the Rebel Tent, part of the Exodus Collective, who tragically died in April this year and so is no longer with us. He played reggae music here in the Rebel Tent. He was DJ Sativa, and he is a massive, massive loss to our community. So we want to dedicate this talk to him today. So I was a member of the Exodus Collective in Luton. I was the founder member of Marsh Farm Outreach, which, if you're new to the Rebel Tent or you don't know our history, that's the history behind the Rebel Tent. And I've been coming to this festival for many years. In 2021, I took part on the Black Lives Matter panel. 22, did a domestic abuse talk. 23, we did a talk, Say It Loud, Say It Clear, Refugees Are Welcome Here. And during that talk, I'm a counsellor and a psychotherapist, so I was given a clinical perspective on the complex trauma that the people who've made the perilous journey to our country were trying to contend with. And at the time, many people were being put on the Bibi Stockholm barge. There was a beautiful, wonderful lady in the audience called Heather, who was actually from that area, and she was volunteering to support the men on the barge. So she contributed massively to the debate, kept in touch, and we were fortunate enough to work with her last year to bring 2 men from the Bibi Stockholm here to tell their stories. And it was wonderful having them here as part of the Rebel Tent family, which we will definitely do again because it's quite patronising for us to speak on behalf of other people. So today, it felt massively, massively important that we still address this issue, but in the context of, as we're sitting here now in this beautiful festival, surrounded by beautiful people, in 20 towns and cities across the country this weekend, there are protests outside hotels housing some of the marginalised people on the planet. These protests aren't even deemed really as extreme or far right. We've come to a place where the far-right ideology and narrative has become mainstream, it's been normalised. 1 in 4 people now support reform. And we think that we're in quite a terrifying place in terms of where we are as a society, but also as a planet. And there's a massive humanitarian crisis. And so we wanted to come not to just talk at you today, but what we're really, really hoping to have is a discussion with you, a debate with you about this issue. So the normalisation of the far right, how did this happen? You know, you've got Keir Starmer a few weeks ago giving a speech about how we're an island of strangers. You know, it was reminiscent of the Enoch Powell speech. These are frightening, frightening times, and we've become very polarised over the last kind of 10 to 15 years. There was the whole Brexit with Leave and Remain, then we went into COVID, and we've all seen this huge polarisation of this kind of them and us. And unfortunately, this is really relevant in terms of how the far right have managed to get to where they've got to, because they are exploiting that divide. And if we don't start to come together and talk about it and work out what we can do about it, I think we're going to be in quite a worrying situation. So that's essentially what we want to do with you here today. These protests that are being held outside the hotels, many of them are led by women, children. The narrative is save our children. We're in a time of actual rising misogyny. So I find it quite shocking that the likes of Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage have decided to choose this point in history to go for women's empowerment and give them the leadership of the helm of these protests. I don't buy it. I think there's a sinister exploitation that goes on, and for that point, I'm just going to hand over to my husband to give an example.
So, hello, have we got, yeah, so what's really quite shocking is how people are getting drawn in. So, for example, we had the whole thing around Rochdale, Sammy Woodhouse, who was, you know, like quite a big figure at that time. It actually turns out that her friend is like Tommy Robinson, and how they now use their language is like, well, no, we're going there to report on these things. But these are basically, you know, a chance to spur on the mob, to get people like fired up about it. One of the big things now is around the whole race and around, you know, basically those that are here, how much sexual offences they commit, and so on and so. And it's easy to frame it under that guise. This thing has gone as far as saying, well, Sadiq Khan didn't back the reports into grooming, but the reality was Boris Johnson, many years previously, when he was Prime Minister, he had an opportunity to pay for those reports, and he said it was the same as spaffing money up against the wall. But the reality is they're using this as a framing to say, well, actually Sadiq Khan is he's an Indian man. He's of course going to back all of that, and that is just all creating a big storm where people are getting drawn in right, left, and centre into this thing, because many of the arguments on the surface sound reasonable. And it isn't, in fact, when you start looking into it that you see the misinformation and disinformation. I, for one, worked with the Refugee Council for a number of years, and the rhetoric that they say about those that are arriving into this country fleeing violence. Like, we're seeing genocide on our screens, like children dying, and people being quiet about it or being afraid to speak. And it represents this big thing, because the people that are supporting these narratives, they haven't just gone, they are there. And it is better to have that kind of conversation where we can address those sort of questions that they're raising, those reasonable questions that most people agree with, to actually unpicking it and seeing what's going on. And it's worth pointing out as well, the algorithms that are online, it kind of fuels that as well, because people can start at the edge of a rabbit hole and in no time at all get sucked in with all the fake information that's there. And it's information, by the way, that fact-checking has been rolled back. So like, it's harder to discern what's real and in fact what's fake online.
So what we were really, really hoping for, like I said, is rather than us speak about this for half an hour each, which we could easily do, couldn't we, babe? But we really want to have a conversation with you. We want to know what people are thinking. What are you feeling? Are there actually points that you're worried about? Does anyone have any views that sympathise with these hotel protests? The last thing we need to do is all end up in echo chambers where we're only hearing our own voices coming back at us. One of the biggest things I hear on social media a lot is, oh, my friend shared this Tommy Robinson thing, so I've unfriended them. This all just feeds into the divide, the polarisation. Actually, there's far more that binds us together than separates us apart. And so we want to connect with you and talk this through and hear your thoughts, your experiences. We know one of the protests is happening in Bristol, not far away from here. There's probably people from Bristol in the tent. And Exeter. Yeah, that's it. It's a minimum of 20 just this weekend. So we'd encourage people to, be brave, put your hands up, join in. Is there a microphone? Yes? Okay.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, so my grandparents and a lot of my family we're all from Torbay, and so that's a massive area where I think reform is quite popular, because obviously it's a large area of like a lot of older people who are on Facebook a lot. And my grandparents, they sort of have this whole rhetoric that a lot of the people in these hotels are basically majority men, and also sexual assaulters is the way they're kind of putting it. So I'd like to know sort of how you can talk to older people, talk to family members, and dispel these kind of rumours and dispel this kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, you've raised a really, really good point, because a really common one that you hear is, they're young males, sexual predators, or a really popular one is Albanian coke dealers. And that's why the conversations themselves are so important. Like the two men that came here last year that were living in the Bibi Stockholm barge were from a place called Baloch in Pakistan. And I had never even heard about what was happening there. It was brand new to me. And it was really eye-opening and heartbreaking to hear of their stories and their terror and the fact that nobody really even knows about it. So I think that's one thing that we can do, is to have spaces where we connect and we try and get those real voices out there. I mean, yeah, you can unpack statistics. I'm not an academic, so that's not really my bag, but you know, statistically what they put out about the sexual predatory behaviours is complete nonsense. So you can go down that angle, but what's really, really important is that we humanise people, because that's what's happened. The media has dehumanised people. They've objectified people. So it's now like this time where people are suffering and struggling financially, probably more than they have in my lifetime. And people are being told that it's these people's fault, these people over here that don't look like you, whilst the billionaires and the millionaires are getting away with everything that they are. So I think it's trying to connect communities as much as possible. If we have action groups supporting people in these hotels, creating spaces where we can connect those people with their local community so they can really become the human beings that they are.
Thank you. Thanks so much for bringing this conversation. I feel like it's a really important one to be had. I was in Bristol, was it last weekend? And there was a protest against, well, it was like outside one of the hotels that was housing migrants. There was a brilliant counter-protest. Hundreds of people showed up. It was like a really amazing day. As part of that, there was some chants that I find quite difficult to hear, like the kind of fascist scum, Nazi scum, fuck off, like da-da-da-da, this kind of stuff, right? Which I feel like I struggle with. It feels like dehumanizing, right? And it feels like it's focusing on people rather than the behaviors, right? Or the views. So I went over to the other side and had some chats with people. I spoke to about 10, 15 people just to hear what they had to say. There were two things that came out really. Was like, one thing I noticed was this value of kind of fairness. So the people that I spoke to, working class people, worked all their lives, paid tax all their life, they felt like it was unfair that people were getting put up in 5-star hotels, right? This kind of stuff. So, but I don't want to get drawn into that. I want to focus on the value of fairness that's underneath that, which is something that we all, I think, especially as leftists, you know, we can all kind of sympathise with, right? The other thing that came out was about safety. So the big concern of the people that I spoke to was around people coming into the country. We didn't know kind of like who they are, right? So there's this, I'm sure you've heard it lots before, but like this feeling of like our communities aren't safe because we don't know who's coming into the country, right? So I just wanted to, I guess, like contribute to the discussion by saying like, there's kind of these values underneath, right, what people are saying, which I don't think are like white supremacists, but they are these like really human values, right? Of fairness and safety, right? So if we can connect on the level of those values, right, and honor them, but also like challenge where the evidence is like false, which it like clearly like that some of the evidence they're using is totally false. I feel like there can be really fruitful discussions to be had, and that's what I want to say.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that you went over and had that conversation with people. That's exactly what needs to happen. And you're right. It's not that these people are extreme or so very different from you. They're people, they're struggling, they're afraid, and they're being told a narrative that it's these people's fault. I feel really encouraged by that. I think coming back to those values that sit underneath some of these behaviours. Oh, I've done it again. I've forgotten what I was going to say. I'm sorry. We keep having a laugh because I'm perimenopausal and I start a sentence and it turns out I need a trail of breadcrumbs to find my way back to it. Sorry, that just happened then. That was it. It's come back. So I think in this kind of capitalist society that we're living in, human life is a commodity. So the point there about fairness and the money that's paid for these hotels, I think we're really failing in humanity if we only see people of value in what they're able to financially contribute to a system. I mean, for a start, it's nonsense anyway, because lots of the people that come here are highly educated and highly skilled. But I think that if we can only measure things in that monetary sense, then we're really, really, really far away from where we need to get to.
Hi there. I just wanted to say thanks very much for coming today. I work at Refugee Support Devon, so we're based in Exeter, and I work with refugees in the hotel. And so I just wanted to feed back about the last few weeks at the hotel.
Wonderful.
So 2 weeks ago was the first protest outside the hotel, and there were 2 people protesting about the people living in the hotel. And there were about 30 people opposing their views. Last week, it went up to about 60 people opposing their views, and 30 of them. And today, this morning, we've had 11 of them turn up at the hotel, and we've had 70 of us. So how have we done that, basically? So I just wanted to go back about your point about Torbay. I completely get you. I know Torbay very well. And what I would say is that you can go down the road of statistics and say, well, actually, the most cases of rape and sexual assault comes from within the home, from white partners. You know, you can do that. But I think that what's really useful for yourself and for other people who are going out on these hotel counter-protests is to arm yourself with facts, because that really makes a difference. Refugee Support Devon have got a myths about refugees. You can just put in Google myths about refugees and you will start getting facts, and that is your weapon for the people when you talk to them, because you can actually come up. Now, what is interesting about the hotel in Exeter is it is 90% women and children. So we've had mainly men standing outside a hotel of mainly women and children. Most of the women have been sexually assaulted and they've been trafficked. So these men argue that refugees are dangerous and they might put our children at risk of sexual assault. And they're literally standing outside a hotel with women who've been sexually assaulted, telling them to go home. Okay? So I think that destroys any myth that might come about by saying, you know, we're there to support our children. You're definitely not. You're not supporting sexually assaulted women who've been trafficked. You know, you're literally... And in the hotel itself, people are absolutely terrified. Now, we've tried to... build support going, you know, we have people going into the hotel anyway, but, you know, we're incredibly fearful about people travelling outside of the hotel on public transport, on the buses, because we have no idea whether someone is going to plonk themselves next to one of these women, most of who are illiterate or have not got a good grasp of English and just feel completely intimidated. So that is just keeping them within a prison there. The last thing I just wanted to say is that in Exeter, we had a history of pushing back against the EDL. Tommy and the EDL decided to do a march 3 years in Exeter, 3 years ago. And we really built part of Refugee Support Devon, linked with other organisations. And we really built to make a family festival. And what we wanted was to show a completely different side of unity and strength and not to completely combat that hate that they were sharing, we did it turned it on its head and made it this is for families, this is for safe. We celebrate diversity, and I think that's, the message that we want to, is one of the most powerful things for fighting back, is actually making it really positive. You're right, we've got doctors. We've had doctors in the hotel. I work in the drop-in. We have lawyers who are coming across. The images that we've got uneducated, dangerous men arriving on our shores is completely wrong. That was just my contribution.
And what a wonderful contribution that was. Thank you, and thank you for the amazing work that you're doing as well. And that's why these discussions are so important too. It can be such a lonely, powerless place at the moment, can't it, in terms of how the emotional side of this hits. And to hear the wonderful work that people are doing really gives me hope. It really does. Thank you.
Hi Kaz, hi Junior. I had a question because I'm seeing obviously a lot of this topic on my social media, and one of the ones I saw, because it's local to us, was this picture being shared around, which was a line of these men outside the hotel, and it said, "Women and children in Luton," because that's where obviously we're from, "beware, they're here, they're rapists, they're sexual abusers, they're going to come and do this to yourself." And, thankfully I'm raised where I don't believe this bullshit, but I've got a lot of concerned mum friends who are like, "Oh my God, have you seen this? Have you seen this?" And my question is, where I'm blessed enough to know the kind of, I'll go to my dad for that and I'll say like, "No, oh my God, what," but I want to understand where that narrative is actually coming from, because I want to kind of squash it from the source and say, that's where I'm a little bit confused, because I'm thinking they've really run away with this narrative of, they're just all Albanian men and they're all, rapists and all of that. And because it's such a serious allegation to make and to state that they're coming here where I live, and if I wasn't raised the way I was, I'd be terrified. I wouldn't leave my house with my daughter. I would be so scared of what I'm seeing, because of course naturally a lot of people's response is, "I believe what I see, there's pictures, it's proof." So my question was, how do I start with, this narrative is coming from this and it's BS, basically? It was my question, to where I can squash it instantly.
Yeah, thank you, darling, for your question. And it's so important, because you're right. I guess we move in circles where we're very blessed to have connections with people from all sorts of different walks of life. But many people, they've not necessarily ever met a refugee before, so they've only got these narratives, these false narratives to go upon. I think my number one thing is when somebody's talking in a way that's jarring, when you hear those opposing points of view and it kind of tightens inside, doesn't it? There's a thing where we can come across as judgmental, angry. Like I say, on social media, what everyone's doing at the moment is unfriending each other. And I think one of the most important things to do is to, rather than judge somebody, rather than think, "Oh, I'm going to move that person out of my friendship circle," it's actually to have these uncomfortable conversations, to sit with that sense of awkwardness, to ask open questions, to find out a little bit more about what they've heard, what kind of evidence they've got to kind of support that. And also to share your experiences, like the two wonderful men that we had here last year. That's what I've been doing ever since, is actually sharing their stories. Do you want to add anything to that, Ben?
Yeah, those images that they're circulating now, they're the same sort of recycled images like from before. So I'm sure you remember in the Brexit, you had the run-up and you had this image of thousands and thousands of people, Nigel Farage in front of the boat, Boris in front of the bus, sorry, not in front of the boat, saying how much money is being lost to the NHS. It's the same thing. They're capitalising on the fear, and what happens is, like the guy was saying earlier, there's like an overlapping bit in the middle, which is everyone's talking about fairness, and deep down inside, everybody wants this fairness, but so the fear is a way to mobilise people. And before even Brexit, they were talking about some areas of London a no-go. They're talking about one man, one children walking, crime wave sort of thing. It's capitalising on that fear. I think what happens is, if we're able to engage rather than shut down, saying open the doors, and then really like hear what, because I think a lot of the people are kind of scared of like, if they come out with that, like they've already framed certain things in certain ways. So like wokeism, like you're a snowflake, you know, if you believe in equality, then actually there's something wrong with you. So it's actually about having those kind of conversations, I reckon. But yeah, it's the same image, just repurposed and refashioned and trying to get people drawn into that narrative. But the truth, the facts hold it out.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course you can. You can talk as much.
I'm hogging now. One other thing I didn't say is that I used to do a lot of stuff in schools as part of Refugee Support Devon, and it's really heartwarming to work with kids and talk about refugees, because kids aren't racist, you know, they really get the fact about everybody should have justice and it's not fair when, you know, and they do understand that most refugees don't wake up in the morning and think they're going to be a refugee, you know, people travel across in absolute desperate times, and children understand that. And I think that's your question about your mums and everything. I think it's really so important, because the messages that parents give to their children, you can see it turn. You can talk to a 7-year-old. I can do stuff with 7-year-olds, and they completely get, you know, that refugees should have chances. By the time they're 12, 13, you're kind of starting to struggle with some families, because they, you know, and that's really difficult. So I would just say again, you know, it's so important to try and get that message about fairness and about justice, and about the fact that we are literally not refugees because we were born in this country. You know, it's all about geography. It's that's as much as it is, you know. So I just want to say that. That's all.
Yeah, another wonderful point. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of like, I guess, add a little piece to what's been said and what I said earlier, which is about solidarity, and it's about class solidarity in particular. And I think it's from the conversations that I had with those people at the demo I spoke about earlier. Something that they all agreed on was that kind of like billionaires are the enemy as well, right? So I feel like there's a mutual point which we can both get to, right? That actually the enemy is really like the billionaires and the corporations and that kind of thing, and perhaps that's like a point of traction that people can agree on. It's a mutual thing, drawing away from like the enemy being these people who are like clearly helpless or whatever. Just wanted to add that.
Wonderful, thank you. I just want to add to that as well that I think the speaker on before us was talking about the fact that there's not been a political home for quite a few years now, and there's a lot of hope with this new party, and actually Zara Sultana is here at 3:00 tomorrow, which I'm incredibly excited about. And I think that it's so important that how we manage this and how we deal with this is multifaceted, isn't it? Like you say, it's going into schools and working with children, it's going and having difficult conversations with people with opposing points of view, but it's also got to have that kind of political engine behind it. And that's what I'm really hoping, is that for the first time in a few years we have a ray of hope, and if we can get enough momentum behind it, then real change is possible.
I work in some schools around Devon, and one of the ones I work in is in Exeter College. I work with unaccompanied asylum seekers, so 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And I was just wanting to say that I've done that for, I guess, about 8 months now, and getting to know the children that have come over from different countries and sometimes travelled 9 countries to get here. It's just incredible, the stories. And they're just so dedicated to learn, and they just want an education, and they want to fit in, and they want a future, and scared of where they've come from, and having lost parents and siblings and not able to talk to any of their family members, and all this kind of trauma that's going on. And I think one of the things that really struck me is that one of the teachers that work at the school, they said that they did some education about sex education and that kind of thing, and appropriate and inappropriate behaviour. And they said they were really surprised because then the boys there, the lads, they kind of said, oh yeah. Their stories was actually they get approached a lot by people from this country, and then it's just they're the ones that are vulnerable because the power is in the hands of the people who are in this country, knows this language, know the culture, and essentially if something were to go wrong or a misunderstanding, who would get the blame? Who would get into trouble? And it was just such an eye-opener for me is actually the ones that are the most vulnerable here are the refugees, not us. It's on its head. A white woman actually has the power in her hands, and this refugee hasn't, because that's where the power it lies. And I think it was just a new thought for me, and how vulnerable they are.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And it's wonderful to hear about the work that you're doing. And I'm sure you've heard some heartbreaking stories from some of those children and young people. I mean, just the journey here alone, like you said, crossing 9 countries, the amount of predatory people along that perilous, treacherous route that these people have had to survive and go through, it's just simply unimaginable to us. And to survive all of that and be here and then to be held in that state of vulnerability, absolutely, it's heartbreaking.
I've just got to say, it's an education thing. That's what it comes down to, is teaching people. The problem is everything on media, social media, television, is showing images of people coming over on boats, and it's mainly showing pictures of men. It's not showing the pictures of the boats with the women and children who are in desperate need. I've got to disagree about the wealth, because there is a lot of wealthy people who are very much in the centre of trying to help refugees. It does come down to education, and it's narrow-mindedness that is the reason why, and this has gone on for centuries, hasn't it? For millennium.
Yeah, it's how our species survived.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? It's whoever it is, and at the moment, unfortunately, it is the poor refugees who are in the limelight, and that's why everyone is turning against them. What you're reiterating about taking our jobs and like all this nonsense about raping children and women. I come from a small village in just outside Glastonbury, and mainly Caucasian white males. And most of them are racist bigots, and I got to say that, I got to listen to it, so it's like, and most of them, I run my own business, but most of the guys that I got working for me, or most of the people I know, they are right wing as far as I can see, and it's, their views are these people, coming to our country, taking our jobs and blah, 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 all this bullshit, but you try and educate them that you need a more faceted, racial country to make things progress. They can't see that, and it is down to education. It's down to people not being, there's too much of maybe the right wing side of things, and not enough of the left wing side of things. Because everyone thinks left. You let them run riot, and they let everyone do what they want to do. But that's not the case. That is not the case. So I just think it is education. Yeah. That is the only way of getting it across,
And keeping those conversations going. The temptation when somebody's sharing such different views to your own is to perhaps not spend too much time with that person, to perhaps close that conversation down and move on. But actually, these are the very conversations we need to be having.
It's wildfire, isn't it? Once wildfire starts, the more you feed it, the bigger it gets.
Yeah.
And this is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. These are very worrying times, and that's why conversations like this are so important.
I've got to say, in my life, so, I'm 53 now. I can really see, I'm so glad I wasn't around, but I can really see 1930 coming back. Yeah. I really can. Yeah. I'm scared. I'm scared for my children and for the next generations to come, the way things are turning in this country, And like I said, it does start from the top, If heaven, well, I don't believe in heaven because I'm a Buddhist, but if if Nigel Farage ever got power in this country, you know, that would be the turning point for the UK. You know, that would be with Trump as well, and him. I wouldn't want to be in the country. I wouldn't stay here. So yeah.
That's why we have to get behind this new party with everything that we have.
Good luck to you.
We?
I just, it just the problem is once again it comes down to education and the more people followers, doesn't it? Because humans are sheep, aren't they?
Well, particularly when they're struggling and they're frightened.
Yeah. That's all I got to say. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
So, I've been on a few of these counter protests over the last year or so, and obviously when you're there, you're often facing them. And I think I echo the gentleman over that way that said, a lot of people are frightened, a lot of people are scared. And I think what has really led to this growth of fascism in the UK in the last couple of years is the change in the Labour Party. So we had, the Tories with austerity, and then there was this idea of change, and I think people elected Labour, and now the material conditions are still bad, and they're looking for any radical change, and reform is backed by big billionaires, so they can get their image out there. The real vehicle for reform is, tax cuts for the wealthy, and they'll use anything that they can to get the mass population to vote for them. And I think they've cottoned on to this, rising racism, and they're stoking it. And then you've got, Elon Musk, who is paying, white supremacists to post on his platform and really spread those messages. And I think, hopefully, your party, the Zara Sultana and Corbyn party, can offer a challenge to that. But I think it really falls at the heart of the Labour Party as to why this has really kicked off, because people don't feel like they have an ability to change anything. You vote red, you vote blue, you get the exact same outcome. So I really hope socialism really takes off in the UK, and maybe Zara and Corbyn can break through and really challenge reform. I don't think Labour can challenge reform. Labour are just trying to do reform-light policies and try and appease those bases, and it's not working.
Absolutely, they are trying to appease. I think it was Jeremy said that recently, didn't he? You're not trying to beat them, you're trying to appease them, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, yeah. And again, great to hear that you've been going out on those protests as well, and that's what I mean, I genuinely find it so heartwarming and hopeful to hear about the support and work that everybody's doing. And I think, personally, for me, Labour's dead. Sadly, for a while I tried to hold on, but unfortunately, I think it's gone, and I think it's a heartbreaking tragedy. But now we do have a ray of hope. Thank you. It's been a wonderful discussion here, but I'll be honest, Junior and I were really hoping that there might be somebody in the audience that does have an opposing view. Did he shout something out? Yeah.
He's been around our Palestine store and he's talking about the boats and he's talking about the refugees. I think he's going to come and he's bottled it.
Yeah, I wish he came and picked up the mic. This is exactly what we need. But it has been absolutely wonderful, all the same, to share this discussion with you today. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and listen to us. It's such an important issue to us, isn't it, Julie? So have yourselves a wonderful weekend and be here 3:00 tomorrow afternoon for Zara.